Hi, Water Street Church family. My name's Roberta. Thank you for coming to spend some time with me today. I'd like to share something a little bit different with you this week. I'm going to share a story that came from a nighttime story that I told my children when they were young. Most evenings I would either read to them or make up a story based on things that they asked me to tell them. So one night, after having read the Bible passage about forgiveness, Eric asked me to tell them a story about a man who had his last forgive. I've written this story out. It's a little bit longer than most Wednesdays at Water, so hopefully you enjoy the story. If you told Benjamin Bartholomew III that he was a dependable, prudent, and responsible guy, he would have considered it a compliment of the highest order. Perhaps it was because he inherited the genes of his grandfather, who had built a small fortune as a small-town accountant and lawyer. Perhaps it was because Benjamin Bartholomew had chosen to follow the footsteps of his grandfather and become an accountant himself. Either way, Benjamin Bartholomew had built a neat and tidy life around order, fairness, simplicity, and love. Normally, love isn't neat, tidy, simple, or fair. But Benjamin had been a truly fortunate soul and had found love, stability, and happiness with his wife, with whom he had been married nearly 12 years. Like all marriages, he had not really known how deep, wide, intense, hard, enriching, and truly amazing married life would be when he made his vows. They had had their share of hard times, including several years before becoming parents. Those difficult years had brought them two beautiful children, a son and a daughter. If you asked Benjamin what the definition of love was, he tried to find the words to describe his marriage. And if you asked Benjamin to define joy, he tried to find the words to describe how he felt about his children. So, because of this, Benjamin's wife had found his behavior over the last several weeks particularly odd. Standing on the outside, you probably wouldn't notice that Benjamin was a little bit more irritable than normal. You probably wouldn't have noticed that he stayed away from other people more and more frequently. And that where it seemed like an occasion might get a bit more heated or strained than ideal, that Benjamin would quickly find a way to leave the room. But his wife noticed. Yet, knowing that Benjamin was dependable, prudent, and responsible, and all of her attempts to draw him to conversation about what was clearly bothering him went without engagement, she decided to wait and see. What Benjamin's wife didn't know was that Benjamin was very deliberately deciding not to engage in conversation with her. He had been holding a secret from her, and it was that secret that was causing him to distance himself from everyone around him. Benjamin Bartholomew III had a little black book. It was his little black book that held his secret. Now, the little black book wasn't a secret. Over the years, people knew that Benjamin carried that little black book with him. He didn't keep the book secret. In fact, over the years, lots of people had looked into his little black book. It wasn't like other little black books that you might have heard about, because while the book was full of numbers and what appeared to be code, it was quite clear that the only thing Benjamin wasn't sharing was what he was tracking. When asked, he would simply say that the book was his way of helping him be a better person. Benjamin's wife knew that the book helped Benjamin be a dependable, prudent, and responsible guy. While she could still admit that, at times, him taking that book with him everywhere felt odd, and it did leave her with questions, she knew that it was a part of him, and it was one of those little quirks that made him the man with whom she had fallen in love. She had found her peace with that little black book. It was still, however, that little black book that was responsible for Benjamin Bartholomew's current situation. To understand, let's go back many years to when Benjamin was a young boy attending vacation Bible school at his small town local church. Not having a family that had much time for church and all of that religious stuff, yet having a healthy respect for money and thriftiness, being busy accountants, his mother had sent him to the vacation Bible school as a safe and quite affordable way to keep him safe during the summertime. Their decision to send Ben to the Vacation Bible School also had the benefit of being good for their accounting business, as everyone does like to see that their accountant has good morals. Much to their surprise, Benjamin liked going to Vacation Bible School. In fact, he actually met his wife at Vacation Bible School. Benjamin came to faith through those summer hours that he spent at Vacation Bible School. And it was because of Vacation Bible School that Benjamin Bartholomew III carried that little black book. The year that Benjamin started carrying the little black book was the year that Vacation Bible School focused on the fruits of the Spirit. Being a remarkably self-aware young boy, Benjamin knew that his fondness for the simplicity of a clean and clear math problem meant that the call to be full of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and gentleness were going to be difficult. Self-control seemed a lot more natural to Benjamin. And then, on top of that, the sermon one Sunday was on Matthew 18, verses 15 to 20, which was all about how many times you should forgive. And that was the piece that nearly broke Benjamin. It was the youth leader who saw him crying on the steps outside that day who put the idea of a little black book into Benjamin's mind. As Benjamin tried to explain how lost he felt, how impossible it felt to be able for him, a logical black and white, right and wrong, left and right kind of guy who just couldn't keep track of all of those things like being good or kind or gentle, and what was the difference between them, and then to have to keep on forgiving 490 times on top of that, faith and belief were just becoming too much for Benjamin. Sitting beside Benjamin, the youth leader gently pointed out that God had given Benjamin talents and gifts, and they were meant to help Benjamin do these things. Besides, Benjamin didn't have to do them alone. He could take all of his thoughts and concerns to God. But, sobbed Benjamin, how am I going to keep track of it all? Well, Benjamin, you're an organized type of guy, so why don't you take notes? And that is how Benjamin Bartholomew III came to take a little black book with him everywhere he went. At first, Benjamin would write down and track the times where he showed gentleness, expressed love, and practiced patience, and so on. But as that became a little bit more of a second nature, Benjamin's black book became strictly about tracking the times that he gave forgiveness. And that is why Benjamin was now acting particularly odd. At the beginning, Benjamin found that he could be a little cavalier in forgiving. After all, he had 490 forgives to use up, and so why not be really forgiving? But in the last few weeks, he had become very, very careful. About 1 week ago was when he had given out forgiveness number 489. And that was why Benjamin very carefully avoided conversation with his wife. He was sure that if he explained this horrible situation to her, she would respond in a way that would see them getting into a fight. And then what would he do? He'd give her his last forgive, which felt fitting and right. And yet, what would he do for the next person? Today, when Benjamin Bartholomew came home from work and he saw his twin son and daughter sitting on the front porch with swollen, tear-marked cheeks, he tried to tamp down the wave of anxiety that he immediately felt. He had had a very long day, a very difficult day, and seeing his children, he immediately knew that he had a problem, and it had to do with his last forgive. Benjamin's morning had gotten off to a bad start. There had been a power outage overnight, and for some reason, his cell phone alarm had not gotten him up on time. He had a big meeting and had planned to be at the office extra early so that he could review the numbers and do a final overview of his presentation for the client. And then when he got to the kitchen, his fancy coffee maker was flashing 12, and he knew it would be too much time to get it reprogrammed so he could have his essential morning coffee. So he ran to his office to grab his materials and then run to the local coffee shop instead. Running into his home office, he didn't realize that he had forgotten to put his laptop into his briefcase. On the way to the coffee shop, someone cut him off, and Benjamin briefly thought he'd have to use his last forgive on this stupid driver. But then he realized that that the driver was likely rushing to the hospital as there was an ambulance just a little bit further along the road. He saw that, for some unusual reason, the drive-through line was far too long, so he dashed inside instead. His favorite server was behind the counter. She called out and asked if he wanted the usual. Nodding yes, he paid quickly, and by the time he was done, he grabbed the steaming cup of coffee placed just on the counter. Hearing her loud goodbye, he rushed out back to the car and then had to wait just a wee bit extra for that long drive-through line to let him to back out. So that meant that he took his first sip of coffee at the red light, which was normally always a green light. And so thankfully, when he spat it out, it mainly covered his windshield and only got a few spots on his previously white shirt. It was clear then that the yelled goodbye was the server's attempt to let him know that he had grabbed someone else's cup of coffee. Once he finally got to work and was told that the spots on his shirt were not too noticeable, he rushed to his desk, having just a few minutes to get set up. His colleague promised to delay the client with some nice warm-up conversation, and so he reached into his briefcase and realized that he had left his laptop at home on his desk. Seeing his face go red, his colleague deftly steered the client into their office and then waved for Benjamin to join them there. Thankfully, his colleague had had the presentation open on the screen, and despite the paper-cluttered-looking desk looking a wee bit unprofessional, Benjamin had to admit that for once his colleague's practice of leaving projects on the go all over the place made it look like they had been hard at work on the presentation. The client appeared impressed with their dedicated work. And so Benjamin's day continued. Every time a near miss, and yet thankfully no need to use his last forgive. But then walking up his front steps, Benjamin watched his son and daughter stand up slowly. He saw the tears start up again, and as they did, his heart fell. "Oh, Daddy, we are so sorry. Will you please forgive us? We didn't mean to do it. It was an accident. We looked with Mom, and we think that we could use our allowances to get you a new one. Please, Dad. Please, Dad, we are so sorry. Please forgive us." As Benjamin slowly sat down on the steps, the story came out. After school, the twins had been sent to the study to finish up their project. They had been working dedicatedly on their project and had just a few details to finish up so that it was ready the next day for school. One of them had dashed to the kitchen to get refreshments and bring it back into the study. They figured it was okay to break the rule of no food in the study because clearly Dad had brought in snacks the night before and the empty dishes were still sitting by his laptop. Actually, one of the twins went back to the kitchen to clean up the dishes and put them in the dishwasher. They knew that Dad had been up late the night before. And then the disagreement happened. There was a bit of roughhousing, a little bit of a push, and the drinks went flying and landed on top of the laptop. The laptop had been covered in soda. It was clearly damaged, probably beyond repair. But they were sorry and they had a plan to fix it. Would Dad please forgive them? But Benjamin Bartholomew III only had one last forgive left. How could he pick? What would he do? He loved them both so much. He wanted to forgive them both. But he only had one forgive. Carefully and without saying too much, he asked them to go inside. He wanted just to take a few moments on the steps to gather his thoughts. He'd be right inside. He'd finish the conversation then. He sat on those steps with his face buried in his hands. He knew he'd have to go inside momentarily and tell them which child he'd forgive and which child he would not. As he sat there trying to summon the wisdom of Solomon, his neighbor started up his ridiculously loud lawnmower. Gritting his teeth, Benjamin was about to yell over to his neighbor and give him what for, and then perhaps use his last forgiveness there? Would it be more even to forgive neither of his children and just waste his last forgive on his annoying neighbor? But then Benjamin had a thought. He didn't have to forgive his neighbor. Rather, he could be patient instead. After all, Benjamin was on edge and his neighbor wasn't doing anything wrong. So yes, Benjamin would be patient instead. That irked him just a little bit though. Pulling out his little black book, he looked at it. He knew that several of the forgives that he had tracked in it were of him forgiving his neighbor for that lawnmower. Perhaps he should untrack those forgives and bump his count back up. Thinking back earlier through the day and looking at his little black book, he realized that, wait, there are more things tracked in that little black book that he could credit back to himself. After all, he had been given the wrong coffee order. Well, okay, not really, because he realized that he had inadvertently grabbed the wrong cup, but what if that had been done to him before? So all the times that he had forgiven someone for giving in the wrong order, perhaps it was just a mistake, and instead of forgiving, he could really more properly just be kind. And then what about that car that cut him off? The driver hadn't really seen him, especially if he had been chasing the ambulance. So perhaps all the times that he had forgiven reckless drivers before, it would have been better if he had shown them gentleness of thought instead. Or what about his anger towards the hydro company and whomever was responsible for that clearly faulty programming on his cell phone alarm? Perhaps he needed to use patience or peace instead of forgiveness. And that's when the weight of that little black book really filled Benjamin's mind and heart. All of a sudden, he could see what that youth leader had really been trying to teach him long ago on that hot summer Sunday. Benjamin took notes of when he practiced forgiveness, according to his black and white, right and wrong, left and right understanding of the world. But really, as he kept track and as he practiced forgiving, he had been growing his skills in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. Benjamin had been giving out forgiveness, but forgiveness was never something you could run out of, nor did you need to track. As a huge grin spread across his face, he took in a deep breath and stood up. As he opened the front door, he called out to his twins. Love, joy, and gentleness filled his words as he called to them. He spoke with kindness and dug into his self-control. Together they sat down and talked about what had happened. Yes, Benjamin forgave both of his twins. Yes, they did have to make restoration for the computer that they destroyed. Benjamin and the twins came up with a good way to make restitution that didn't see the twins emptying their bank accounts. Today, Benjamin's little black book sits firmly on his desk at home. It took a bit of time, but one evening Benjamin had taken that little black book to his wife. He sat her down and carefully shared with her the story of the little black book and what all the notes in it meant. She laughed and cried with him. The next weekend, they took the time to tell the story of the little black book to the twins. Today, when someone in the Bartholomew house starts to get on another's nerves, or the behavior gets just a little on the outside they expected, you can expect to hear one of them shout, "Don't make me use my last forgive." The end. I hope that story could speak to you. I hope you could hear part of the scriptures in it. So thanks for spending time with me. Until next time.